All right.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So cash flow crisis, right? So this situation has, put some people in some difficult situations with their cash flow. So what I want to talk about today is some things that you are in your control to help you address your cash flow. Okay. So first thing we got here is a quote from Robert Frost: "The best way out is always through." So, this is a difficult situation that a lot of us are going through, right? And the best way out is to get through it, right? And we will, and that time is coming. Hopefully every day we get a little closer to getting through this. But, we're going to be stronger for it on the other end, right? So anything like this comes up in the future, I think we'll be more equipped to handle a situation like this. Okay, so income assistance, just a couple bullet points here. The state has obviously the unemployment insurance. You can apply online. There's some, work search exemptions, and you can even file for loss of hours or pay in certain situations. I'm not going to get in all the details of the stimulus package, but it's, total of $2 trillion. And some of the bullet points I have here are actually, I think this week, some of the first direct payments are going to people with direct deposit, up to $1,200 for adults. I believe it is up to $75,000 per individual, or $150,000 per family, and then $500 for children. And then there's the $367 billion loan program. A part of that is the Paycheck Protection Program, where you can apply for a forgivable loan. That, as of April 10th, opened up to independent contractors as well. So that's a really important thing that if you don't know about, you should. A lot of people have already put applications in, but just as of, I guess, about 5 days ago, individual contractors can apply for that program. If anyone needs any help with that, you should reach out to your accountant or your local bank. And sorry, my phone is ringing. Okay, so additionally, there's some boost to unemployment insurance benefits. So additional $600 per week for 4 months on top of what the state program regularly pays. New tax deadline. If you didn't already know, but you probably do, your taxes weren't due today. They're pushed back to July 15th. If you're expecting a refund, of course, you'd want to file them faster. But if you have to pay, you don't get any penalties for delaying completing your taxes.
Hey, Jason.
Yeah.
Is that that additional $600 per week? Do you know if that's automatic? Is that something you have to apply for, or is it automatic when you apply for unemployment?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it just depends on your application details, and then they'll calculate that.
Okay.
Okay. So for cash flow, step one is you got to identify, all of your current monthly expenses. So before we prioritize them, you need to understand where everything is. Some people are really good at this. Some people avoid this like the plague. But if you do need help, our website has some free resources for getting a spending plan together. So you can go to tpfinancial.com. Or maybe you're doing a really good job of getting this done all by yourself. Either way, you have to know where everything is first before we can start, prioritizing. So prioritize cash flow. So the number one thing is the non-discretionary: food, shelter, utilities, transportation. These are the things that we need, not the things that we want. So these categories are you're gonna have to find the money to pay for these, right? So it's the things above that, which is the discretionary, that we can control, right, and try to limit to help our cash flow. Travel, entertainment, gym, clothing are here. These things might make us feel good or more comfortable in our living, but if you truly have to, limit some cash flow, we need to start cutting some of the discretionary wants. Okay, so prioritizing these items is the first step. Every dollar is going to help through this, and that's the goal of, if cash flow is an issue right now. So we want to try and save every dollar that we can in our situation. Okay, so here's the bulk of what I'm going to talk about today. A couple of bullet points here, some tips to go over. So if your income has been reduced, one of the things you can do is to suspend excess debt payments and only pay the minimums. So, Turning Point always recommends to pay down your debt as fast as possible, especially things like credit card debt. It could be, very high interest rates. Um, this usually requires, paying more than the minimums on those cards. But with a cash flow situation, maybe just pay the minimums, at least for the short term, to get you through the situation that you're in. You're going to pay a little more interest over time by not paying it down faster, but that's okay, right? This is a short-term cash flow, solution that we're trying to help you out with. There's a debt snowball strategy that we use a lot of times to help people pay down the debt. But right now, if you're trying to increase your cash flow, just pay the minimums for right now, and that's okay. The next piece is the refinancing debt. So, with the people with FCAR probably familiar with mortgages, right? So the rates have definitely been pretty low here recently, and it might have an opportunity to do some refinancing and lock in some lower rates to cut down your payments. And sometimes, depending on the timing, you can work it out where when you do that refinance, you can actually skip a month, right? So that might save you a month of payment. That can just be another help to your monthly cash flow situation. Now, when doing that, obviously, if you have, let's say, 24 years left on your mortgage, um, you could do the refinance to a 30-year. You're going to add additional 6 years there, and you're going to help your cash flow. But in general, we try not to recommend that in a lot of cases. So you could refinance to a period that is similar to where you're at. So if you have 24 years left on your mortgage, maybe you do a 25-year. If you have 14 years left in your mortgage, maybe you refinance to a 15-year, something like that, to try to keep you on the same pace of getting that paid off. So, but case by case situation with how that might work out for you. Let's see. Reduce contributions to 401k or any retirement plan that you might be contributing to. So typically we recommend that you do save as much as you can for retirement, things like that. But with the situation of trying to help your cash flow, maybe you need to pause your contributions for a period of time. This is a short-term thing. If you're able to still make them, that's great, because with the market down, maybe you're buying at a good price. But at the same time, if you need to meet basic expenses, this is and you have contributions that you're making, this is something to consider to not do. At the same time, if you are lucky enough to have a company or a situation where they're matching your contributions, you would still want to at least get that full company match, because honestly, you could contribute that, get the match, and then take it out, in a couple weeks if you had to, and you'd still have more money than if you never contributed at all. Um, Contact utilities and creditors and ask for payment help. So, it's human nature to avoid having to face hard situations. And it might be difficult to maybe reach out to some of these people and say you're struggling with your payments. And, but it's the best thing to do. Reach out to your utility companies, your mortgage companies, and see what they can do. You may already have heard a lot of, benefits out there of delaying your mortgage payments. And you're not going to find out if you don't help. If you don't ask. So those companies want to get paid, and they're going to work with you to make sure they can keep everything, going in that direction. Maybe they're not going to get paid as much, or maybe it's going to take them longer to get their money, but they'll, most times try to work with you, and hopefully they will. But the sooner you reach out to them, the better. You might want to put out a reminder every 28 to 30 days to reach back to them, to kind of give them an update, to make sure you're having good communications and there's no surprises on either end with whatever situation or debt payment that you have there. Do you have available credit? The next bullet point here. So, what do you already have in place? Maybe you have a HELOC, maybe you have if you do have employment at a place with a 401k, you could potentially get a 401k loan. Maybe you have credit cards, right? They're typically the last resort. But, if you need to, pay for some essentials, those priorities, right? You can go to what existing, you know, credit that you have. There are, sometimes those 0% credit card offers out there that, for 12 or 18 months, for a small situation that might be able to help, bridge the gap between now and, kind of getting back to your higher income days when COVID wasn't affecting us all. So hopefully, no one's doing this. Don't hoard supplies, save the cash instead, right? So, you've seen probably on the news and heard, you've probably seen it in person. Things are out of stock. People are hoarding things, right? It feels like there's a panic. Toilet paper, ammo, meat, all these things are like off the shelves. You know, don't be doing that. I mean, if you need to buy a little bit extra because you don't want to have as many trips to the grocery store to avoid this, the social, that makes sense. But, we're not looking to be overbuying things, and then, the worst thing would be if you buy all this stuff and then your electric goes out for some reason. Now you have to throw away hundreds of dollars worth of stuff in your freezer and your grocery items. So, be nice to your fellow man. Don't hoard everything. Whoops, I just rolled too fast. All right, so everyone loves this one. Consider a second job, right? So, this isn't probably the most favorite choice of a lot of people, but if that's a situation that you find yourself in, you can consider that. There's a lot of different things going on now where people are actually hiring. There's a lot of DoorDash and Uber Eats and people like that are hiring. I even saw the SBA is Small Business Administration is hiring with all these loans that people are asking for. There's a lot of different places that are actually hiring with the changes, so it might make sense for you to look at getting additional part-time job to help with your your short-term cash flow situation. These next two, I'm going to put these together. So a lot of us end up putting our certain bills on auto pay, right? So I'm going to say take everything off of auto pay right now to really get complete control of your expenses. All right. In addition to that, a lot of these are these inventory subscription services. Okay. So some of these things are discretionary that we can cut out. And if we're looking to help our cash flow, we want to limit these types of things. I mean, me personally, I was going through my credit card the other week and I saw this, it was like a $30 charge from the Frederick YMCA. I'm like, what is that for? And I remember my son was on the swim team a few months back, and to be on a swim team, you had to sign him up for a membership. Well, he hasn't swam there in 2 to 3 months, but I'm apparently paying for him to have a membership there, right? So these things can add up, right? So if you take things off of auto pay, that can help give you more control, right? And then you can even cancel some of these things that you really don't need right now. And then, you know what, if you really miss it that much, you'll go back to it. But I bet some of these things we might just never add back to our situation. The last piece here, find ways to save on food. So cook at home. Well, I mean, that's probably what a lot of us are doing now. But, again, we're talking about cash flow crisis. So if you're really trying to make every dollar and you're trying to stretch it as far as possible, there's ways that you can make some, larger meals that are simpler with less expensive ingredients, things like that. You might see what's on sale for that week or whatever at your local grocery store and try to go with those items just to help stretch. Ramen.
Ramen noodle.
Ramen, absolutely. Ramen noodles. I mean, actually, I don't know.
10 cents a pack in bulk or something.
My kids right now are on some kind of ramen kick. Like, can you get ramen? I'm like, sure, I guess so.
That's actually one of the items they were saying people are hoarding. There's
Oh my
nothing on
God.
the shelf.
I will concur. That is very true because they're like, can you get me the ramen? I'm like, okay. And I had to go like 3 places to even find it. So
H Mart.
is
I
that?
was just Thinking back to college days and ramen was it, so.
Yeah, yeah. So, it might not, I mean, it does add up, right? I mean, you can spend a lot of money on food depending on what you're buying. But if cash flow is an issue, you know, there's actually plenty of even websites and places that can give information, or even YouTube on, low cost family meals you might be able to make. So, um, the next one, so this is specific again to the CARES Act. This is all about, these are retirement accounts. So this may or may not apply to you, but if you or someone you know, it'd be good information to share. So required minimum distributions are for, people who are older, who have retirement accounts, and now the government is saying you must take, minimum distributions. So, what they've done is they've allowed people to suspend these for 2020. So it's not quite in alignment with cash flow crisis, because these distributions are money into your account that you could spend. But if for some reason you don't need to take the money out of these retirement accounts and you want to let them, roll into next year and, maybe recover, if they're invested in stocks that have, lost value, you can let them go into 2021 before you have to take those distributions. So that's also for inherited IRAs. So unfortunately, my mother-in-law passed away last year, and we did get some inherited IRAs from her. And, we would have to take the money out this year if it was a regular situation. But, now we can choose to, if we don't want to take that money out, we can just let it stay in the account, grow tax deferred, and then we can, take that money out next year. So these are, so that's one item. The next one is distributions. So, individuals can take up to $100,000 from their retirement account, such as a 401k or IRA, and they can, if they are under than 59 and a half, normally you'd have to pay a 10% early withdrawal penalty. So they're waiving that for up to $100,000, and which is significant. You're still going to have to pay your regular taxes, because this money's never been taxed, but you can avoid a 10% penalty, which is really a nice flexibility, and an option for someone who needs to get access to some funds. It's also retroactive to the beginning of January of this year. So they also have the ability, in addition to that taxes they have to pay from that distribution, they can spread it out over the next 3 years. So that's an option to consider for some people. I mentioned this before, 401k loans. So the rule has been for many years, you can take up to $50,000 or 50% of your balance in your 401k as a loan. So they essentially doubled that. So now you can take up to $100,000 or 100% of your balance as a loan. So that's a little bit different than the distribution, right? So that'd be where you're going to continue working at that same company, and then as you earn income over years, you can repay back that loan. But that's potentially a good way to get access to some funds that you couldn't otherwise. You can also extend the repayment for that as well. So, okay, so that's cash flow. It's good to think about the future, right? Because once we get back to mostly normal, and a lot of this is behind us, you want to keep in mind that you want to focus on building or rebuilding an emergency savings for any future issues or situations that could put you in a cash crunch. We recommend 3 to 6 months of cash as an emergency, savings for situations like this or anything that might, affect you. Again, we want to, get back to paying off or paying down debt as quickly as possible. If we've accumulated debt over this time frame, we want to try and get back to cash flow positive and then paying down that debt. And, depending on your situations, right? Your investments are for the long term. You know, if you have money that you're going to need in a year or two, probably shouldn't put it in the market or invest it because you need it. And the last piece we have here is invest in yourself. You know, with this time on our hands, you know, do things that help make you more productive, maybe just, you know, feel good about yourself, or maybe more marketable in whatever, you know, situation that you have. So definitely take some time to invest in yourself. And, you know, hopefully everyone, you know, cash flow crisis can be very stressful. So take time just to take care of yourself. And the last piece I have here, you know, I have any questions, a small group here. So if you want to ask me a question, go for it. Or if you want to reach out to me or anyone else has any future questions, you can email me or just give us a call.
Jason, I
Yeah,
have a question for you. You know,
sure.
some of the options provide, you know, an ability to get cash from a retirement plan or, you know, a number of other sources. What concerns me is, you know, that people react to the short term, not thinking of long term.
Right.
When you make some of these suggestions to people, are you guys also talking to them about, you know, making sure that they're doing this carefully? Because, for instance, the mortgage thing,
Yeah.
where a lot of people think that they get forbearance for 3 months and that they don't, you know, either those payments are getting put at the end of the mortgage or they don't have to make those 3 payments. You know, a lot of people don't understand that on the 91st day, you know, you have 4 mortgage payments still.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, they're, you know, what we're trying to do is how can we make it through this month, right? Month to month.
Uh-huh.
But you know, you bring up a good point. It is very important for, you know, people to realize what might happen in 3 months, right? And depending on their situation, I mean, you know, they might have to pay it. They might get something waived. There might be a partial thing there. Um, it's, you know, it's really a case by case, but it is important to understand the details of what they're doing. To like what you just, you know, that's a big smack in the face if someone didn't realize that or didn't know what they were getting themselves into, right? Because not too many people are used to paying, you know, 4 mortgage payments at one time. So, you know, if that is the case, right, they should, you know, just try to plan for that. And at the same time, I mean, depending on where they are, I mean, you know, I've spoken to a person who's like, I don't know if I can make, at the time, it was in March, if I can make April's payment. So worrying about, you know, 4 payments in July isn't a concern if I can't make 1 payment in April. You know what I mean? So it's just, you know, it is case by case, and it's really about understanding those details. I mean, um, you know, people have different levels of being affected with like a cash flow crisis, right? Some, they're like, I'm good for 3 to 4 months, right? Once we hit 3-4 months, things are really going to get difficult. So maybe they can make adjustments now that might stretch out where, you know, so maybe they're better for 5 or 6 months, right? And really make, the smaller the change and the sooner the change, the more it's easier to handle. But those huge changes, you know, are difficult. So, I mean, it's my best answer for that.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
thank you, Jason. We've been crossing paths quite a bit here lately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice surprise here.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining, and
Yeah,
hopefully
thank
there's
you for
some
doing
valuable
that.
things there. One of the last thing I'll mention, and I'm not sure if the PPP loans that is available, the forgivable loans. I know that you can go to a lot of banks can help you out. A lot of banks are only helping people that are only their current clients.
Right.
So, you know, if your own bank can help you, great. You know, there's sometimes there's an agent and a lender. If someone needs help applying for that, you could look for an agent or your bank. So again, that's your own accountant. We do have a CPA Brandon in our office that could help people with that too. If they need it, he can act as an agent to help people through that in case anyone needs a resource.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a
for
great
doing
day.
it.
Absolutely.
You too.
You will. See you
Thanks.
soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.